Legacy of the Void story has earned a bit of stick for being, not the best. But I'm gonna look at what Legacy of the Void story did right. Because why would anybody want to be negative on the internet? I can't really avoid spoilers on this one, so keep that in mind. StarCraft 2 has had a big apocalypse side plot going on for the Terran and Zerg campaigns from now. And now the Protoss finally get around to actually dealing with the big bad, Amon, a godlike being who believes that everything will be better with a few more tentacles and a lot more dead. Artanis, a veteran of StarCraft 1 and now the supreme leader of the Protoss, has built up a big golden armada to fight the Zerg and to slap Amon. Unfortunately, someone downloaded Amon.exe into the Protoss brain network, which leads to them all becoming red and evil. Zeratul cuts Artanis' dreadlocks to free his brain, but is killed because Artanis really didn't want a haircut. Artanis and his homies blast off in an old spaceship that conveniently holds an infinite army, and go off to ally with less cool Protoss to beat up on Amon. They do so with basically zero complications, and the universe is saved. So what does it do right? Throughout StarCraft 2, each race has had its own distinct identity. Terrans as a rising power staking their claim on the universe, the Zerg an all-consuming, constantly evolving swarm. Your identity was reflected in how you played those races and how you could improve them. Terrans got ahead through technological innovations, whereas the Zerg evolved and engineered more diverse forms. But the Protoss are a race that has already reached its technological zenith. It wouldn't make sense for them to start inventing new units. Instead, their power and development comes through cultural diversity, and that is a point that is constantly reinforced throughout many aspects of the game. Artanis constantly preaches that the various Protoss cultures are strongest when they're united, and this is totally backed up by the gameplay. As you forge alliances with your alienated kin, you unlock new units which usually aren't that radically different from one another. Instead, they're all different cultural perspectives on the same idea. Artanis' argument that the Protoss are stronger through their diversity seems like dull political rhetoric at first, but as you play and make your own gameplay choices, you come to the conclusion that he's right. Often the strongest force you can assemble will have units from all the different Protoss cultures. It's an elegant maneuver that has game design and unit balance weaved directly into the core element of the story. Furthermore, it sets up Artanis as diametrically opposed to Amon. Both of them are political leaders, one more schloopy than the other, I'll grant you, who both seek to unify the Protoss. Amon seeks unity through conformity and, mind control lasers, while Artanis wants unity through diversity. And why is this interesting? Because by the game's own admission, prior to Legacy of the Void, Artanis' people were basically pursuing the same goal as Amon. They had this big giant brain internet thing that kept them all in a kind of hive mind. Coupled with a rigid caste system, this kind of society frowns upon and stifles individuality, going so far as to having wanted to exterminate the Nerazim for not wanting to be part of their cool brain internet. Amon appears as the logical extreme of that system, where individuality is fully suppressed, basically turning the Protoss into the Borg, or the Borg-Toss if you will. And it sets him up as kind of a straw man in this argument. At the start of the game you start off with a small variety of units, and you're faced with a far superior opponent. The first few missions where you're trying to escape from the Borg-Toss are some of the hardest in the game. But later, as you unite with the different Protoss cultures, the missions become easier. Not because your enemy is getting weaker, but because your army is getting stronger. Then, when you face the Borg-Toss again, you're practically wiping the floor with them, because they're still stuck with the same old units, in the same old mindset. The difficulty curve itself helps to tell this part of the story. The game doesn't beat you over the head with its diversity message, although Artanis sure tries to at times, but the way it ties it into the gameplay is quite impressive. While it can seem like Artanis keeps hammering the same points about unity and revolution to the point where it gets quite repetitive, the fact is that these are core values to the character. At the start of the game, it seems like he's seeking unification as a means for killing Amon, But as the game progresses, you realize that he's actually killing Amon as a means of achieving the unification. Everything this guy does is in pursuit of that goal, from retaking Aya to abolishing the caste system, to accepting the Robo Bros as true Protoss. While it can make him sound like a bit of a broken record, it shows his conviction and dedication to this one central belief that defines his character. Even the character design itself reinforces this. After he kills Zeratul, he spends the rest of the game wielding the Blade of Shakuris, a Dark Templar weapon. By mixing these elements of his design, Artanis is established as a bridge between the various Protoss cultures, which is ultimately his whole role in the game.
You stood alone, as Dark Templar, against countless enemies, risking your life for the many. You have walked as we have. You have walked the Shadow Path already, Artanis. You no longer have the Khala. You are Dark Templar.
After you blast off from Aya, you spend most of the game on the Spear of Adun, a massive ship which, as I said, holds basically an infinite army for you to use. But it's more than just a ship. During missions, you can call for orbital support from the Spear of Adun in the form of buildings, units, and space lasers. You can also customize its abilities, causing it to grow and change. But what does this have to do with the story? The way you interact with the Spear of Adun is quite similar to playing an RPG. You're given a series of powerful cooldown based abilities and can collect resources to level up the spear. There's similar mechanics to what you might experience in World of Warcraft or Diablo. And through these mechanics, they make you see the Spear of Adun as a character in its own right. It becomes not just a vehicle, but a faithful buddy that's got your back. It even gets a cool character moment. In the final mission, you have to hold off thousands of dudes while the Spear of Adun fights an entire armada in orbit. Throughout the mission, the spear gets more damaged. Systems you've been relying on the whole game go offline and you see wreckage come raining down. And at the end, its power drains away before it finally loses its last system. It ties the story and the gameplay together really neatly. And when I noticed that energy plummeting, my first thought was, "No, Spear of Adun!" Of course, after the mission, the ship is totally fine, but it still had that moment of heroic sacrifice. The cinematics are really nice, and you get to meet Robo Phoenix. And hey, Carix gets a promotion. And the rest of the story is kind of a mess. It's functional, but it doesn't do that much to fire up the imagination. But given that I'd like to end this on a high note, I'll say that I really like the bit where Kerrigan gets set on fire and punches Cthulhu.